Hello and welcome to Frank's School. It's a Monday. The weather is beginning to get warmer. Spring's going to come finally, and eventually I'm going to turn to water. But I'm still going with and I will for quite a while, going through the Kings and Queens of England. I'm using Alan Herrera's work. Episode 2 is the one I'd like you to look at today and go up to the 15th minute 16th second, right about there's a good place to stop. And in the process, he'll be discussing Henry III, Simon de Montfort, who wasn't king but a very powerful figure, and then Edward the First, also known as Edward Longshanks. Uh, before before I go on with this, though, I had mentioned Saint Francis of Assisi. And something else I wanted to say about him. In a way, I'd once read that he sort of flipped out on courtesy. This idea of courtly love and the way a knight should act at court and be courteous. This thing that's so hard to explain. Eleanor of Aquitaine's court and all. Well, it was widespread in the thinking at that time, and. Francis, his mother was from Provence in southern France, and you could just sort of see that thinking spread out. It expanded to his son, her son, and he took it in a way that he wanted to be the most courteous person you could be. So if he had a coat and somebody else didn't have a coat, well, the courteous thing to do would be to give him the coat. You basically gave everything away. Then you were the most courteous. I used to mention that sometimes to the children at school. At lunchtime, they'd go running down the halls and they'd see who could get first to get to lunch, in the lunch line, ahead of the lunch line. I always like to be at the end of the lunch line. That's where I like to be. And I said, I'd once explained to the kids, I said, well, that's the polite place to be. You should be last and let everybody else go first. And certainly let the girls go first. They were like barbarians when it came to that kind of thing. Well, anyway, I wanted to make a connection with St. Francis. How to explain a phenomenon like him. Castile, you'll also hear, Castile is in Spain, modern day Spain. But these areas are influential on England, France, and Spain, right up to Edward Longshanks. All right, you're going to hear about the Earl of Pembroke. He was a regent. His name was William Marshall, an important man. Happily, Alan Herrera pretty much says this all, and you can just kind of follow along. A lot of this I'll write down because you might not be able to catch the words. He refers to the importance of consent in England, the idea that people are governed by consent. We'll agree to let you govern us. That idea. We'll see where that goes. Anyway, he refers to that. The Battle of Evesham. Evesham, I think, is the way you say that. It's a miracle that I was able to write it down. Part of his style is he drops his voice sometimes. As he's telling these stories, which he does very well, but he does drop his voice. And for somebody who's not English, for an American, that makes it especially hard to catch a word like that. Well, he'll get to Edward Longshanks, Edward the First, interesting stuff, He'll refer to English nationalism, the connection to King Arthur and Queen Guinevere. Even though they had been Normans, they had been French, but now they were beginning to speak English. Tax on wool was a way to begin to, I guess I'll use the word centralized control, get money into the central government. And then there is the persecution which led to the banishment of the Jews. And the Edict of Expulsion was what kicked the Jews out of England at that time. Where did they go? Well, I think a lot went to Spain and Portugal, and they were eventually kicked out of there as well. That's a different story, which I am studying at the same time for my own purposes because, as I say, I'm using this as a backbone. And I will steadily be saying, well, what else was going on in Europe at this time? All right, well, I hope you enjoy listening to Alan Herrera's work. I can't imagine that you could remember this all on hearing it first time, but it's still it's interesting to hear. Bye for now.